Today's story is a little controversial at times, and so it gives me an opportunity to talk about what I want to talk about today. This story is in John 8, and I'll tell this story. Some people don't even think this story is supposed to be in here, but it's a story that even a lot of non-believers in Jesus know about. This is the story of the woman caught in adultery. Now again, Jesus went up to the temple, and people gathered around Jesus and he sat down and he started to teach the people. Now the scribes and Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery, and they placed her in the middle. And they said to Jesus, "This woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Now according to Moses, he said that such a woman needs to be stoned. But what do you say?" Now they were saying this to test Jesus because they were looking for some way that they might convict him or accuse him. And so Jesus sat down and he started writing in the ground with his finger in the dust. But they kept pressing him for an answer. And so Jesus stood up and he said, "Whichever one of you is without sin, let him be the first one to cast a stone at her." And then he crouched down again and started writing in the dust again. Now when they heard this, they started to leave one by one, beginning with the older ones, until no one was left except the woman herself alone with Jesus. Jesus stood up and he said to her, "Woman, has no one condemned you?" And she said, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said, "Then neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." This is the story that was found at the beginning of John 8. Okay, so this one of the things I wanted to talk about today was interpretation. Because when you tell a story, you are adding more of the five senses than when someone just reads it for themselves. When people read the story for themselves in the Bible, they fill in a lot of the interpretation. But when you tell a story, your body language, your tone of voice, and even the speed at which you tell it can sometimes drop interpretation into the story. Now, some people are very nervous about this, and I can see why. You can certainly steer the meaning toward this or that a little bit when you tell the story. And it's probably true that you've studied the story yourself, so you probably do have some feelings, or maybe you've even made some discoveries about how this relates to other parts of the Bible that you want to sort of embed in your interpretation of that story. So I would say that there's a real principle that if you feel like you are over-interpreting a story, that you should try to be a little more neutral, maybe tone your voice down, make it a little bit more as if someone was just reading the story. If you're trying to emphasize something, you might mention that after you told the story, that I emphasized this because I discovered this, but it may or may not be true. And in that way, you kind of cover your bases in a sense. But I do think that interpretation in this story is important because a lot of people use this story to just say, "Oh, you should just be graceful all the time. And even if people sin or they lead a lifestyle of sin, that Jesus wouldn't really condemn them, so you shouldn't condemn them either." And for that reason alone, you might not want to forget that last line where Jesus does say, "Stop sinning." Jesus still holds people accountable. But I think there's a lot of theology, even in a simple story like this. And in many ways, getting people to discuss it is good enough. I mean, people are going to think through these things, but I do think when you're performing a story, be aware of how you're interpreting the story through your tone of voice and through your emphases that you're putting on the story. Those are just some thoughts as we do continue to go through these yellow stories. If you're just learning, you might actually see others on YouTube or something telling stories and just see if you can sense that people are interpreting through their telling. I think it's a very interesting idea. So when we tell the stories, we definitely want the Holy Spirit to be working in these people's hearts to convict them of sin and to lead them to all truth. So thank you, and we'll see you later.